Welcome back. Updates from Russia's invasion of Ukraine now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is in Poland on an official visit to a close ally that has taken in millions of Ukrainian refugees and provided vital weaponry to the Kiev government. The visit to Poland comes as Ukraine plans to conduct a counter-offensive in the coming weeks or months to recapture land in its east and south from Russia. The NATO member has played an important role in persuading other Western powers to supply battle tanks and other weaponry to Ukraine. Polish officials say the talks would focus on developments on Ukrainian front lines, international support, and economic cooperation. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has awarded the Order of White Eagle, which he was awarded, and which is Poland's highest order, during his visit to the country. In Warsaw, Zelensky met Polish President Andrzej Duda and was also scheduled to meet with Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki later today.
Nie ma żadnych wątpliwości, że jest pan, panie prezydencie, że jesteś w Wołodymirze.
The Order of White Eagle, which I have an honor today to award to Mr. President Zelensky, is the oldest and most precious Polish order. There's no doubt that you, Mr. President, that you, Volodymyr, an absolutely special man who received a mandate from his people to be a president of Ukraine and accomplish this very exceptional mission that no one could have predicted. And looking at your service to your country, it is hard to hide the tears of emotion.
It's a great honor for me to be here today with my wife and to thank the President, his team, the Polish government and every Pole for what you have already done. You have not abandoned Ukraine. You have stood shoulder to shoulder with us, and we are grateful for it. I believe that these are historic relations, a historic result, and a historic strength between our countries.
Miroslava Gongat is the Voice of America's Eastern Europe Bureau Chief, joins me now from Warsaw. Hi, Miroslava, welcome. A Ukrainian president has landed in Poland. Give us a bit of an itinerary of his visit.
Unfortunately, I have a very bad hearing because right now they're preparing for the President Zelensky's speech, so it's very loud here. But what I can tell you that this is exactly, as you said, very important visit, and we can consider that this visit as a thankful note, because Poland was one of the leaders of supporting Ukraine, and finally President Zelensky made this official visit. This is actually first such an official visit, because before, all the visits that President Zelensky made to other countries were not announced previously. This one was announced 2 days prior to the visit, and basically all the schedule were announced as well. So this is, he met with President Duda, he met with Prime Minister, he met with Polish business, with Polish and Ukrainian community that came right now here to listen to the President Zelensky.
And the Ukrainian president has been awarded the Order of White Eagle, which I just mentioned, which is Poland's highest order. What do you think it feels like for him to receive this award from the Polish president?
We have to say that for Poles, I actually talked to a couple of experts yesterday and today, and they see Zelensky as a noble man. They said he's a noble man because he did not abandon his country. He stayed in the most difficult time of his country during the war. He did not leave the country as he was advised to, and he stood with his people. For Poles, very proud people, for them this is a nobility, and that's why they think he deserved such an award. And we saw the emotions on both presidents' faces, on President Zelensky and President Duda. For President Duda and for Poles as generally, it's very important to understand that they see that Ukraine is fighting their own battle. They told me during interviews as well, they said very rationally, they said that Ukrainians fighting with Russians for our own. We were fighting Russians for many years, for decades. And now we have to support Ukraine because we know quite well what can happen if Ukraine will fail. So that's why Poland is a leading country in supporting Ukraine.
And now we know that Poland has played a very crucial role in this war by sending weapons and taking in even Ukrainian refugees. Would you agree that this visit has been long overdue?
We can say that. However, Ukraine is in the war, and it's not that easy for the president to leave, even for one day, because anything can happen, and he feels that he has to be in Ukraine. This visit, one day, very short, but very tense, with a lot of events. And we have to understand that since the beginning of the war, 10 million Ukrainians crossed the Polish-Ukrainian border. Obviously, from then, many of them left, returned back to Ukraine, or settled elsewhere in Europe. However, over a million Ukrainians are settled here in Europe. They came here today to hear their president, and they are hoping that to hear the note of optimism that they will be able to return back to Ukraine as soon as possible, and they really want this war to be over.
And lastly, how are Ukrainians and Poles who are both there reacting to this? What's the mood in Warsaw?
We can call that Warsaw become kind of second capital of Ukraine because so many Ukrainians are here. 300 Ukrainians just in Warsaw. It's a third of the population of the capital of Poland. So yes, the mood is upbeat. They want to hear the president. They are thankful for this country to help them, to give them shelter. And Poles actually calling Ukrainians not the refugees. They calling Ukrainians our guests.
All right, Miroslava, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre has welcomed Finland to the NATO alliance, calling it a historic day. Finland's ascension ending 7 decades of military non-alignment, roughly doubles the length of the border the North Atlantic Treaty Organization shares with Russia, and bolsters its eastern flank as the war in Ukraine grinds on with no resolution in sight.
Biden released a statement. Today, President Biden released a statement welcoming Finland as NATO's 31st ally. This is a historic day for the NATO alliance, and it comes on the 74th anniversary of NATO's founding. Welcoming Finland to NATO has been a priority for the president. He has been actively engaged throughout this process, hosting Finland's president here at the White House several times. The Senate acted in near record time to advance the ratification process, and Finland's ratification process, which took less than 1 year, is the fastest ratification process in NATO's modern history. We also look forward to welcoming Sweden as a NATO member as soon as possible and encourage Turkey and Hungary to conclude their ratification process without delay. Both Finland and Sweden are strong democracies with highly capable militaries who share our values and vision for the world. As President Biden said, when Putin launched his brutal war of aggression against the people of Ukraine, he thought he could divide Europe and NATO. He was wrong. Today, we are more unified than ever, and we will continue to preserve transatlantic security, defend every inch of NATO territory, and meet any and all challenges we face.
And Finland is looking out for its neighbor Sweden, as the Finnish president Sauli Niinistö said his country will work hard to secure Sweden's membership of NATO too. Finland and Sweden applied together to join NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. Of NATO's existing members, Hungary and Turkey have still to ratify Sweden's membership application. Niinisto said Finland's most significant contribution to NATO's common deterrence and defense would be to defend its own territory.
It is a special honor to welcome you here on this historic day, as Finland becomes the 31st member of NATO.
It is a great day for Finland, and I want to see that it is an important day for NATO too. Security and stability are those elements which we feel very strongly. And well, we can all think that if people can live in secured, stable circumstances, that's the basic element of happy life. And you, I guess, know that Finns are very happy already now. See that this is a process from 30 to 31, and like you said, very nearby future to 32. That is that we work for Swedish membership very hard. We are doing that together with them, together with you, and that will continue. From Finnish point, also Swedish membership is most important. We have all the way been working together with Sweden. We continue helping them as much as possible. I have been discussing with President Erdogan. You have been discussing many times, and I think at least I have a very positive outlook.
Nothing should hinder or be an obstacle for also the final ratification of also Sweden to become a member. This is a top priority for the alliance. This is important for me personally, and all allies agree that we should try to finalize the accession also of Sweden as soon as possible.
Meanwhile, Finland is building a 200-kilometer-long fence along the border with Russia. The 3-meter-high fence is equipped with electronic sensors expected to take 4 years to complete, aiming to prevent illegal migrations from Russia. The fence will be erected at a border crossing point in southeastern town of Imatra, as currently the border has only a few small fences to prevent cattle from crossing. A Finnish border guard said before the COVID-19 pandemic, up to 13,000 people cross that point daily. Now, just a couple of hundred people travel across the border. And in 2015, nearly 5,000 illegal immigrants crossed the border from Russia into Finland.
We had this like 13,000 passengers. This all lanes was full of cars. So it's it's very hard to imagine, but then it was like different. I was working then, so cars were like, the line was so big, it's like full of cars through here, almost up to Imatra.
The United Nations Human Rights Council overwhelmingly voted in favor of extending the mandate of an investigative body probing possible war crimes committed since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. 28 countries voted in favor of extending the mandate of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on Ukraine by a year, while 17 abstained and 2 voted against the body, which Ukraine says is essential for keeping Russia accountable for its crimes.
Cause dire humanitarian consequences in Ukraine, throughout Europe, and around the world. And the forcible transfer and deportation of Ukraine's children is truly sickening.
A draft as such can only intensify contradiction and confrontation, and it's not conducive to the peaceful settlement of the Ukraine crisis via diplomacy. China will therefore call for a vote and vote against the draft resolution.
Mr. President, we believe that this resolution will not bring parties closer to securing this dialogue. Rather than contributing to the resolution of the conflict, this resolution may serve to drive a deeper wedge between the parties. South Africa will therefore vote to abstain on this matter. I thank you for your attention.
And the Kremlin said it was not taking an overly optimistic view of the future of the Nord Stream gas pipelines, despite German insurance companies renewing their cover for the Baltic undersea link. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov says Russia is closely following the situation.
I would refrain from overly optimistic conclusions in this regard. We are watching the situation closely. We are still convinced that a transparent international investigation with all interested parties is needed into those terrorist acts that led to the destruction of this very important pipeline. We are also still convinced that this pipeline infrastructure is extremely important for Europe's energy security.
NATO foreign ministers have emphasized the importance of an increased cooperation with partners ahead of a meeting with global partners. German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock says Russia's invasion of Ukraine highlighted the need for like-minded partners to stand for a rule-based international order. Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto, whose country joined NATO a day earlier, said it was important for members of the U.S.-led alliance to consult their partners and to listen to their proposals. His Canadian colleague Mélanie Joly referred to China as a disruptive global power and called for NATO members to invest more in the security of the Indo-Pacific region. Swedish Foreign Minister Tobias Billström, whose country is not a NATO member but a guest at the meeting, said the alliance should better understand the tensions that are now building up in the Indo-Pacific, but also the possibilities for cooperation between the European Union.
Bonjour tout le monde. Hi, everybody. Well, of course, we followed very closely President Xi's visit to Moscow, and we are, of course, afraid that China will offer additional help for Russia and Russia's aggression against Ukraine. And I think it's very important that we have a common response to that. It will be today very important to listen also our Indo-Pacific friends and how they analyze the situation, what are their proposals. I think this NATO Indo-Pacific cooperation is important.
Canada believes that China is an increasingly disruptive global power and will continue to address the challenges of the Indo-Pacific here at NATO, but also at home, and that's why also we increase funding for security in the Indo-Pacific.
It is important for the European Union to understand the tensions that are now building up in the Indo-Pacific, but also the possibilities for cooperation between the European Union and the countries of the Indo-Pacific.
And the European Union's top diplomat said China has a moral duty to contribute to peace in Ukraine and must not support the aggressor in the war started by Russia's invasion. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who was speaking with EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell in Brussels, announced that the United States and the European Union are exploring ways to further reduce Europe's dependence on Russian energy.
There is a clear expectation from a permanent member of the Security Council to stand up in defense of international rules-based order. And China has a moral duty to contribute to a fair peace. They cannot be siding with the aggressor. They cannot be militarily supporting the aggression.
We share a commitment to preventing a climate catastrophe, accelerating the global clean energy transition, building resilient, secure, and diversified supply chains for renewable energy, and doing it in a way that creates good-paying jobs and lowers costs for people on both sides of the Atlantic. Russia's weaponization of energy has underscored the urgency of that task and an opportunity to accelerate our progress. And so over the past year, the United States and Europe have thrown our energy security cooperation into even higher gear. More than a year of Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, the stakes. When we convene the Council in a few minutes, we will focus on how we can further reduce European dependence on Russian energy and boost the Euro-Atlantic region's clean energy production.
The message to both the government of Ethiopia and the Tigrayans is to make them understand that we are watching the settling of the conflict and will only normalize our relations in a gradual way, step by step. Thank you.
More than a year into Russia's full-scale invasion, a translator with no prior military experience was advancing through the forest with rifle raised, training to ambush enemy forces in one of Ukraine's newest military units. Border of Steel is one of 8 new storm brigades training 40,000 soldiers that Ukraine wants to use during a counteroffensive against Russian occupiers in the coming weeks or months. The drive comes as Kiev may face growing challenges recruiting new troops. Its forces have been weathering a Russian onslaught for months in towns like Bakhmut in the east, where thousands of soldiers have died.